Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're well. It's a beautiful day outside. So happy Wednesday. We'll talk about COVID first, and then I've got several other things on my list. And of course, we'll take your questions today. So the COVID numbers continue to be pretty steady. Yesterday in the region, 16 people were admitted to the hospital. And that really, if you look back for the last 7 to 10 days, it's ranged between 19 on the 19th to as low as 10 on the 16th. So has been just hovering around that number, a little up, a little down for quite some time. So that is that's good, especially in light of the what we're hearing on the national news and locally as well, but what we're hearing on the national news, which is that there are a lot more cases being reported. We know that in Missouri there are quite a few cases being reported in far southwest Missouri, Springfield, Joplin, northern Arkansas, and so they have a lot more testing going on there, but they also have some industry association, is the way it's been explained to me. So we're happy that of those people that are being tested and being found positive, we're not seeing the increase in hospitalizations. So they're either not here in this region, or they're not sick enough that they need to be hospitalized. So we also know that we are seeing some of the cases in some areas trending a little younger. And a lot of that is due to increased testing, because previously the only people who could get tested, I'm talking about 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, the only people who could get tested were people who had several symptoms. So people who were symptomatic and pretty ill. So naturally, though, that testing would lead to more hospitalizations. Now that there is broader testing among all age groups, you are seeing an increase in cases, but fortunately, we are not seeing an increase in hospitalizations at this point. So we think that's significant. We also think that it's because most St. Louisans, not all, but most St. Louisans really have internalized the social distancing, the mask wearing. I don't see people shaking hands anymore. We're not hugging anymore. We're standing back, maintaining a distance from one another, even when we are together for meetings or events or at restaurants, that sort of thing. So I said real early on, way back in the middle of March, the only thing we have to fight COVID with is our behavior, because there's no medicine for it. There's no vaccine for it. So the only way to fight COVID is through our behavior. And I think for the most part, people have done an excellent job of that. And that's showing up, continuing to show up in our numbers here. We are continuing to coexist with COVID, and it looks like it'll be at least through the end of this year, maybe into next year. So we're just going to have to continue with these behavior changes. So thank you all for that. I know you get it. Wear your masks. Stay apart. Here's one of my masks today. So that's on COVID. And if you have questions, of course, I'll answer those during the question period. Let me just mention, I did an interesting thing this morning. Judge Edwards and I and Otis Williams from SLDC went to Jefferson City to the Gaming Commission meeting. We went there because Lumiere's casino license was up for renewal. And it was an interesting process. We were there to testify in favor of renewing Lumiere's casino license. them, that also means that it's not just the people that work directly in those businesses, but it's catering companies don't have business. It's folks who, stagehands who set up for our conventions don't have jobs. So that sort of tries to tie it together for you as to why we would be so interested in making sure that Lumiere got its license renewed. And they did vote to renew their license, so that's good news. Maybe they probably would have done it even had we not gone, but no sense in taking a chance on that. So had a quick trip to Jeff City this morning, just got back about 30 minutes ago. So maybe some of you will find that interesting. What else here? Oh, let me recap yesterday for you. It's pretty exciting. Yesterday, we did a news conference at 1 o'clock to announce that USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, which is currently located at the Goodfellow site in northwest St. Louis City there, they announced that they're moving 1,000 jobs to downtown in the Met Square building, that's 211 North Broadway. And they're leaving the Goodfellow site. A couple of years ago, several years ago, it was determined that the Goodfellow site likely had some environmental issues. And so GSA, General Services Administration, headed by St. Louis's own Emily Murphy, a St. Louisan who is appointed to be the head of GSA, they announced that they were moving these 1,000 employees from the Goodfellow site to downtown. That's great news. No subsidies. I've seen some chatter about that. No subsidies. Just moving to the heart of downtown. 1,000 employees added to the population, the daytime population of people who work in downtown is a real plus. There are about 75,000 people who work in downtown every day now. Downtown goes from the river out to Jefferson, I think it is, and Del Mar to Choteau, or those might, maybe even a little south of Choteau. I think we include Purina in Nestle Purina in those numbers. But 75,000 people work in downtown every day. This is another 1,000 people right in the heart of downtown. That'll be really good for restaurants, for workers who go out to lunch. It'll be good for workers who pick up groceries on their way home from Culinaria. It's good all around. We're pretty excited about it. Before COVID, the city was having the best year ever. We had tremendous momentum, lots of development, lots of pluses happening. COVID has really cramped our style, I should say. Cramped our style, or put a crimp in it, whichever you want to say. But this was a real positive announcement. And I've got to thank, of course, Otis Williams for working hard on this. Also, Congressman Clay, Senator Blunt. This is something we've been working on for close to 4 years. I took a trip a couple of years ago to DC to meet with Emily Murphy. It happened to be during the federal shutdown. I met with her here in St. Louis last year, in the fall, I think it was. Really just constantly asking for and saying how important it was to maintain those jobs in the city of St. Louis. So a win. Thank you. What else? Maybe I'll go to questions.
Okay.
We'll go straight from there to questions.
We have a couple of people asking about when the city will be able to provide updated COVID-19 numbers. They've been down for a couple of days.
So here's the deal. We received, we and probably others, we received some numbers for cases that were not actually in the city. They were in other places, and this is just a confusion. We get them from the state in various places. So this happened, I think starting last Friday or so. So the epidemiologists, they're all working through all those numbers, making sure they get them all right. The bottom line is likely to be that our number is going to drop a tad. Not enough to be significant or change any trends, but we're just trying to get the right numbers up there to make sure we have the right demographics. I talked to Dr. Eccles about this yesterday afternoon. They're working on it with the other agency because there's so much reporting. The reporting comes from the state. The reporting comes from hospitals, the reporting comes from labs. So anyway, just hang in there. We're going to have the numbers. It doesn't mean anything bad is going on. That was my concern, of course. Maybe it's yours too. Oh, well, why aren't we putting up these numbers? It just means that there's a glitch in the data, and it's going to be figured out very soon and posted.
Jacqueline is asking, Mayor, if you have an update on playgrounds in the city.
We talked to Dr. Eccles about that. We're looking at probably a couple of weeks.
We do have a question from Tracy, who mentions that there was one person who had tested positive for COVID-19 at the Medium Security Institution, asking about their status and how we are keeping other detainees safe during this time.
Tracy, is that who that was? Thank you, Tracy. So, I've talked about this many, many times over the last 3 months, and talked about all the precautions that we put in place at both MSI and at CJC. Because we know that congregate living facilities, no matter what they are, nursing home, jail, juvenile home, those are places where you can have transmission very, very easily because you've got a lot of people living together. So what we put in place months ago was no visitors, except lawyers. I think lawyers can now visit, but no visitors. We quarantine everyone. We sanitize the jails extensively. We take temperatures for all of our employees and everybody coming in and out of our jails to make sure nobody's symptomatic, nobody seems like they're sick. So the good news is we've gone 3 months without a case, and that's a little bit of knock on wood here. So our procedures, our infectious control procedures have been working. We do have a case. As of a few days ago, end of last week, I think it was. And so that everybody who has in the pod, in the group of people that individual lived with, have been tested. Most of the results are back. There still are a few left to come back. We'll probably have it all within a day or two. In addition to that, we are strongly encouraging all employees at MSI to be tested. The individual who tested positive was not new to MSI. He has been there for a while, months, not days or weeks. And so, you're trying to figure out, well, how does that get in, and everybody's been quarantined who's come in place in contact with him, and he's quarantined, of course, also. So it's a matter of working through this. We know you can't pick up the paper without understanding how difficult it is when you have a lot of people living in a common space. And MSI is split up into pods. That's why there were only 13, I think it was, 13 people that this individual was living in close contact with. It's another reason why we're not, we're trying to limit movement between both facilities as well. So it's all about testing. And I won't be surprised if there's another case or 2 or 3, because when you have people living in that close proximity, that's what occurs, like a nursing home or fortunately, most of the people at CJC or MSI are likely in a lot better health than people in nursing homes who are quite old and have all the problems that come with being quite old. So yes, that's the situation.
Beverly is watching, Mayor, and has a question about whether your office is working with our local schools to help make sure that when kids go back in the fall, they'll be as safe as possible.
We are working with local schools. Dr. Will Pinkney, he's been on with me before on this. I don't know if you remember seeing him, but he is the Director of Children, Youth, and Families. And he has been very involved in working with daycare centers, childcare centers, schools. It's ultimately the school's responsibility to make that decision, because there are no schools in the city of St. Louis who report through the city. They're all their own independent SLPS, St. Louis Public Schools, its own independent entity with its own elected board. So they will make those decisions, but we want to make sure that they have all the information that they need. The same with the archdiocesan schools, same with the independent schools. So yes, we are working with with all of the schools to be sure that they have what they need when they go back.
Mayor Robbie has a question. He is watching. You mentioned at the top of your broadcast about the outbreak or the rising cases in outstate Missouri.
Right.
Curious what your thoughts are on the governor's reaction to that, saying that Missouri will not go backwards and will not close down again.
I think that in St. Louis, we'll decide for ourselves, and we have the ability to do that. I hope we don't have to close down again. I hope we don't have to pull back some of this, but I would not guarantee you that we won't. I can only speak for myself in this case. Dr. Page, he would make an independent decision. It's very likely that he and I would be on a very similar page, no pun intended. I couldn't think of a better word. But yes, so we are watching our numbers in this region very, very carefully, as you know, particularly the hospitalization numbers. And, we're looking at that, and we can control what we can control, which is right here in St. Louis.
So Mayor, you've been a big fan of masks, and they can help reduce transmission. And so Steve's question is, why is the city not requiring people to wear them in public?
I don't know if you were watching on Monday, but I feel like I talk about this on every one of these, but maybe not. So we are requiring employees in businesses that are open, restaurants, retail, if they interface with the public, restaurants, retail, offices, everybody who's working there must wear a mask. We are twisting the arms, strongly encouraging, doing everything possible to get everyone else, customers, let's call it, or if you go shopping, to wear a mask. And part of the reason that we have not mandated it is that we feel that we would have to put people at those businesses to help those businesses enforce it. And, who is that going to be? Are we going to put that on the businesses themselves? We know of a number of businesses that require masks. We also know that the state of Illinois is requiring masks, and that many employees who have been stood out in front of the store, the restaurant, and said, you can't come in, have been spit on, a knife was pulled on one of them, a lot of verbal abuse. And so we're trying to let businesses here figure that out for themselves. The other thing that I would say is that I'm going to guess somewhere around 80% of the people that I see in the city of St. Louis when I'm out and about are wearing masks if they're near anyone. Now, if you're on a walk by yourself, you probably don't have to wear a mask. You ought to have one with you in case you see somebody and you want to stop and talk to them. But that's why it's a matter of trying to persuade everybody wearing a mask is for your safety, it's for my safety, it's for your friends, your family, all of their safety to stop the spread of COVID. Because even though you might be thinking, well, I'm young, I don't have anything wrong with me, I don't have any underlying conditions, and if I get COVID, I get COVID. I know some people are thinking like that. But if you get it, you might give it to your grandma. You might give it to an older person who you work with. And they might have the underlying conditions, and they might actually have a very severe outcome up to and including death. So this whole mask thing, just wear a mask, for goodness sake. It's really not that big of a deal. And wouldn't you just go just that far for the people that you care about? It's not a political thing. I mean, don't fall for that. Just don't fall for it. Just do it because it's not a big deal for you, and it can help protect people you care about.
Few more COVID-19 related questions. We have one from Andy at Channel 2, Mayor.
Hi, Andy.
What concerns, if any, do you have about the return of Cardinals baseball? What were the city's requirements for players to take the field? And do you see a scenario in which fans can go to Busch Stadium at any point in this abbreviated season?
Andy, I don't know if fans will be able to go to a baseball game in this abbreviated season. It seems unlikely today, but as I've said many times before, things have changed quickly. With regard to having the Cardinals play baseball without fans in the stands, we reviewed all of their, when I say we, the health department reviewed all of their plans, which are very extensive, for how they are going to do sanitizing, how they're going to keep players safe, how they're going to keep other workers who have to be in the stadium safe. And Dr. Eccles was very happy with the very extensive plan that Major League Baseball and the Cardinals had put together. I would expect nothing less from the Cardinals. They are a great organization. They don't want anything to happen to anyone, and they put together a really good plan.
Dawn has a question, Mayor, about City Hall. How is City Hall being cleaned, and what are the rules for the members of the public who need to come down here?
So, a couple of answers to you, Dawn. City Hall is being cleaned extensively with sanitizing, spray, wiping everything down. We also have done we call it fogging. There's a company that will come in and fog, say, the office. They've been fogging all of City Hall, 1520 Market, Street Department, other places that are city-owned buildings. And that sanitizing, that fogger sanitizing, lasts for a couple of weeks in terms of killing anything on surfaces and that sort of thing. We know here in my office when it's been done. It was done last Friday night. It's been done about every 2 weeks for the last 3 months. Because when you come in the morning, if you left papers laying on your desk, they're just have the corner curled up a little bit, so you know that there was a little bit of mist that got on them. That's the only inconvenience. It doesn't smell bad. So that's how City Hall is being cleaned. Now, if you need to come to City Hall to do something, you just come in City Hall like you ordinarily would. You're going to have your temperature taken. They're going to ask you what you're there for, what is your business there, so that they can make sure that the where you might wait in a line is 6 foot distanced. So it's really a pretty safe situation. But having said all that, I would say to you, are you sure that what you need to do can't be done online? Check that first. An awful lot of what residents need to do and businesses need to do can be done online. So if you check that out and it can't, then come on in.
So other topics and questions that we have, this is sort of related to COVID-19, but we do have a question about evictions resuming in the city of St. Louis and how the city is preparing for people who might be affected by that. So
evictions are done by the court system. You all know that. And on July the 7th, I believe is the date, there are around 100 cases that are that can begin to be evicted. None of these cases are people whose evictions or who got behind on their rent during COVID. All of these are people who already had a judgment before COVID started, before the middle of March. So those folks, those 106, I think it is, it's a little over 100 folks, the sheriff will begin evictions on those second week of July. Now, folks that weren't able to pay their rent during the COVID crisis, those will begin being processed by judges, but none of them will be evicted for at least another 30 days, probably another 60 days. So there is time to work things out. We have a couple of things. One, we have mediation to happen between tenants and landlords to try to help you come up with some reasonable, some agreeable, I should say, agreeable deal with your landlord. So we do have a mediation process for that. And so we're working very hard to try to not have people out on the street. So we do have rental assistance if that turns out to be something that's needed. We also have utility assistance. Now we're waiting on the CARES Act funding to get passed by the Board of Aldermen, and fingers crossed it'll be Friday. So When that happens, that's when those funds become available. But mediation is a good idea. Before you even get to mediation, talk to your landlord. Try to figure out if you can work something out for paying what you owe over some time, or maybe even a discount, or all of those kinds of things. You know, try to get it worked out.
Ashley's question, Mayor, is if you could speak on the fatality rate and the recovery rate of COVID-19, please. How many people have died and how many people are getting better?
All right, Ashley, hang on here. By the way, this is all online. So let me get to the numbers here. In the city of St. Louis, we've had 154 deaths. Out of, let's just say in round numbers, 2,400. The 2,319 as of last Friday. So 2,320. So that is 154 on 2,300 is about 7%. Now, what we also know, and this is region-wide, that 2,774 people have been discharged from the hospital. So, you know, I would never, I don't want to say this is good, because anytime somebody dies is bad, right? But it is primarily, and you can see this on our website, you'll see almost all of the people, not all, but almost all the people who have died from COVID-related illnesses in the city and frankly across the state are older people who have underlying health conditions, or I should say it in this way, people with underlying health conditions who, and particularly those who are older. So it isn't good anytime somebody passes away, but the rate is pretty low.
So we have questions on some other topics, Mayor. A few people have asked for your thoughts on the significance of, for the first time in city history, that the Board of Aldermen, or well, Board of Alderwomen now, is led majority female. And is it time to change the charter so their titles are just alders or alder persons?
So that's interesting. You know, that was on my list of things to talk about at the top of the hour, and I didn't do it. So yesterday was election day in 2 wards. The 4th ward elected soon to be Alderman-elect Gwendolyn Evans, and the 12th ward elected Alderwoman-elect Vicki Grass. And so they both won yesterday. That means that there are now 15 women serving on the Board of Aldermen.
I think it's 16.
Okay, well, Jacob's corrected me that it's 16. I
counted
counted on my fingers, okay, so I could be wrong, but there's now a majority women at the Board of Aldermen. So that's fun, kind of good news. And we congratulate Dwayne Evans and Vicki Grass. We're very excited that they got elected yesterday. Now, I think the question was, why don't they change the name?
Change the charter so their titles are just alders or alder persons?
You know, we could do that. I sometimes, when I'm writing, I will say alders. Some aldermen and alderwomen really don't like that. They think it's not respectful to the office. It could be alder persons, could be alder people. You know, some people call it council members. I mean, our charter calls for aldermen. That's what it says, aldermen. So yeah, that could be changed. And you know, when I address someone, I say Alderman Oldenburg, let's say, and I say Alderwoman Carol Howard. So we usually address one another by the correct gender. Sometimes you mess up, but.
So on the USDA announcement, Mayor, we had a follow-up question about whether that those jobs will be adding to the city tax rolls, and sort of what's the impact of 1,000 jobs that were in the city relocating in the city.
So I think they will continue to pay the same earnings tax, for example, that they're paying now, unless they get a raise and they'll pay a little bit more. So, you know, it's not as much about additional taxes, although there might be more Might be more lunches eaten out when they're downtown in the Met Square building than there was when they were on Goodfellow. There might be more of that, more economic activity as a result of that. But it really is a matter of keeping those jobs in the city of St. Louis. It would have been a very sad day to announce that they were moving out of the city. And it's a matter of having those jobs located in an area where we think there will be additional economic activity.
Jewel has a question, Mayor, about elections moving forward. How are we going to make sure that voting is safe, especially in African American neighborhoods, regarding issues and other
stuff?
Other stuff.
Okay. So, Jewel, if you want to vote absentee, you can as a result of COVID. If you're afraid to go to the polling place, you may vote absentee. I would say, though, that polling places will be cleaned. All the poll workers will be wearing masks. You should be wearing a mask. If there is a line at the polling place, and there likely will be in November for sure, that's presidential, be sure you're 6 feet apart. The polling places will be marked for that. It's probably not a lot different than going to the grocery store, for example. I don't know if you're doing that. But it's a matter of wear a mask, use hand sanitizer, because we had hand sanitizers at polling places, and just take the precautions that you know you need to take. Wash your hands, stay 6 feet apart, wear a mask.
Jennifer's question.
Or vote absentee.
Jennifer's question is, how can we protect the statue of King Louis IX atop Art Hill in Forest Park?
So I know there's some talk about removing the statue of St. Louis that's in front of the Art Museum in Forest Park. I am not in favor of that. I think it's a distraction to a lot of hard work that we all need to do. I don't dispute that probably the statue of almost anyone who, particularly from a vastly different time period, that there are probably some things that they may have been involved in that by today's standards are inappropriate and would not at all be acceptable. But I'm not in favor of removing the statue of St. Louis. I'm not in favor of renaming the city of St. Louis. I'm not in favor of renaming Jefferson Street or Lee Avenue. All of those things, we could get really tied up in that. But that would not mean that Black people in our city had better opportunities or better education or were treated more fairly or had a more equitable outcomes. So that's the way I see it. I think we have hard work to do here. We shouldn't be distracted.
So, on your favorite topic of the week, fireworks, Mayor, Fair St. Louis is canceled this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, if people want to celebrate in their neighborhoods, John's question is, will police resources actually be used this year to write the citations for fireworks that were announced last year, and when will this start happening?
They were announced last year. They were done last year on the 2 days of 4th and the 5th. I think it was, or maybe it was the 3rd and the 4th. They wrote about 30 citations. I know, I hear a lot of fireworks at my house. I bet you're hearing a lot of fireworks at your house too. Very difficult to know where that sound is coming from. So yes, police, just like last year, they will write citations for fireworks, people shooting off fireworks, because fireworks are illegal in the city of St. Louis. You can't shoot them off. Identifying, finding those individuals and giving them a ticket or arresting them is a whole nother story. Yes, of course we want to do that. So if you know exactly who's doing it, be sure to give that information. But when you call in and you just say, I hear fireworks, and I think it's coming from east of my house or west of my house, that's pretty broad. So yes, let me say this. I think all of you can do more to prevent so many fireworks from being shot off just by, one, not doing it yourself, not engaging in it with your friends, your neighbors. I know fireworks are fun. They're actually a lot of fun, but they're also dangerous. I told this story on Monday. You'll probably be sick of hearing it pretty soon. Macklin Deli burned to the ground 2 years ago because fireworks landed on the roof, started the fire. I was talking with someone yesterday whose wife works in a hospital, and they have already had someone come in with several fingers blown off from fireworks. I mean, we all know this to be true, but we think it won't happen to us, so we're going to go ahead and shoot off the fireworks. No, don't, please. So yes, the police will do it, but you can do more to prevent it than they can, frankly.
3 more questions today.
Okay.
Marcia's question is, when will nursing homes reopen to visitors and family members in the city of St. Louis? Do you know?
I think there have been some people who have allowed some visits, outdoor visits in socially distanced, but we really don't recommend them. COVID is still out there. And, you know, your family, let's say your small family wants to go visit grandma, but we know you don't want to expose grandma to anything. And the results for grandma might be really, really devastating. So, yeah, it's a very hard thing, but I think it's going to be a little while.
Okay. Jeff is asking, Mayor, if you have an update on the financial aid that's available in the form of small business grants through your CARES relief package.
I do. $5,000. You need to go on and apply if you haven't already. You got to apply. We won't have access to those funds until the Board of Aldermen passes the board bill, comes over here to my desk to sign it. The minute it comes here, I will sign it. If they pass it on Friday morning and it comes here, I will sign it on Friday afternoon. So you have to have applied, though, and it's small businesses in the city of St. Louis who have a business license and 25 or fewer employees. So just go on our website and apply if you haven't already.
And last question for today, Tricia is asking, along the same lines of your COVID relief package, when will rental assistance be available?
Same answer. It won't be available until after the Board of Aldermen passes the bill, but I'm going to say it's going to be a couple of weeks. I mean, the Board of Aldermen will pass it, I think. Fingers crossed, they're going to pass it Friday. Is it Friday? Yeah, today's Wednesday. Friday. I think they're going to pass it on Friday. They're going to pass it very soon, we do believe. And then I'll sign it, and then shortly after that, it'll be available. If you have a situation where you're unable to pay your rent, please talk to your landlord. Work it out with your landlord. You know, we'll probably have some mediation for, need to work through all that. So, is that it?
That's it for today.
Thank you all. Appreciate you being with me today. Have a good rest of the day. It's a beautiful day out there. And we'll be back and talk to you on Friday. Thanks.
Been to a Trump rally before?
No, sir.
What are your expectations?
Truth.
Truth. At a Trump rally?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Barack Obama had big part of 9/11.
Which part?
Not being around, always on vacation, never in the office.
Why do you think Barack Obama wasn't in the Oval Office on 9/11?
That I don't know. We'd like to get to the bottom of that.
We don't even know if he's a citizen.
Yeah, if you don't look at the birth certificate, there's almost no evidence there.
Exactly.
So there's nothing Barack Obama could do to prove that he was born here.
If there was maybe witnesses that were attendants at his birth. Say
Like
no.
his mother? Do you listen to his
No.
mother?
No, no. She has motivation to lie.
So you don't trust Donald Trump's birth certificate either?
Yeah, because he's been here forever.
Well, how do you know? But what's your proof?
Well, his parents and
But no, but they're biased. I'm talking about like people who could be
why
in the
would
room.
they be biased?
Well, like, I'm just using your logic against you.
Okay.
Outside of having no proof, what proof do you have?
I don't have any.
You don't have any
My
proof.
opinion.
Your opinion. And what's your source?
Just Facebook or Twitter. I mean, everything. And
So you'll look at like facts and bull You'll put it all together.
Exactly.
Obama is a Muslim. He's a terrorist. Nobody will ever tell me different. Do I have proof? No. Do I have articles? No.
But your mind is made up without any information.
My mind is made up.